Hello and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, as we go into the new year, there are going to be a whole lot of new trends also emerging post-COVID. How is work going to happen? Are we going to continue working from home? What are the technologies that are going to help us enable us to actually do our jobs and also to live safer? These are some of the questions I'm going to be discussing on Roundtable today. Joining me is a panel of experts. I have Tejpreet Chopra. He is the founder and CEO of the BLP Group, which actually works in artificial intelligence, focusing on driving productivity across industries and also works in clean energy. TP, as you know, Tejpreet, has been known. He's also been a former CEO of GE in Southeast Asia. Pranjal Sharma, he's just written a book, Automated India, that's going to help us figure out what to do next. And he's a commentator, columnist, and of course, a former editor. Kaveri Bamzai, former editor, India Today, also an author, columnist, commentator. Shahana Basu, she's an international corporate lawyer and columnist, and she's also going to be looking into data privacy and all kinds of issues that are going to be spin-offs of the new tech world that we are going to be inhabiting. Pranjal, can you help us set things in perspective? What does 2021 look like in terms of the technology trends?
So, firstly, I think Priya, 2021 is going to see some slow improvement. We don't expect, just because the date changes, everything will be back to January 2021 levels. I think what we saw in 21 was crisis management. Out of crisis management emerged a lot of interesting new ideas, solutions. But fundamentally, everything that we have seen in terms of use of technology, whether from work from home to education to healthcare, is a response to a crisis where you have to somehow forge ahead despite all the restrictions, which are essential, but despite all the restrictions. I think out of these, a lot of interesting new ideas and solutions have come, some positive, some negative. I think first half of 21 is going to be where everybody will assess to see what can be kept. So if you want to use a lot of video calling, where is it necessary? It won't be for everything. It will be for certain things. If you want to use online learning, it will be for certain types of students, not for perhaps everybody. You cannot expect early childhood, early kids in primary schools to be as adept at online learning as senior professionals. So we will see some rebalancing over there. Similarly, in terms of businesses, a lot of businesses have moved to cloud services basically because offices are closed. So you move to cloud so that you can work from anywhere. It's not just about working from home, but it's also being able to access all your enterprise management tools from wherever you are. So the use of artificial intelligence and automation will be rebalanced to the new needs, which will move from one extreme. We move from one extreme to the other, but the needle will come to the center. And then I think technology will probably be able to help us figure out a new path ahead.
That's really where you come in also. How is technology going to help in various sectors, manufacturing, services, of course, we've already seen that happen. But how is it going to become an essential part of our lives?
No, thanks a lot, Priya, for having me on the show. Let me just start by taking a step back with four broad trends that I see in 2021 that's going to have a big impact. And I think technology is one of them. I think the first one is reversal of globalization. If you look back from 1980 to about 2020, we've seen an incredible growth in the global economy because of globalization. Free trade, things moving around has caused this incredible growth in globalization. The question is, where do we go up from here? Is there going to be a huge amount of disruption, or is it going to be business as usual? And I just feel that 2020 onwards, it's going to be a period of disruption and disorder. This disorder that's going to happen because of this reversal of globalization is a cause of because of the pandemic. I think a lot of countries are going to be a little more inward looking rather than outward looking. And I think that's going to have a broad impact around the world. Overlaid with that, the whole US-China relationships is going to have a huge impact on globalization across the world. So that's number one. Point number two, I just feel inequality going to be worsening. Inequality not only across countries, across companies, and that's again driven partly by the technology disruption. So you're seeing a few large tech companies getting bigger and bigger and bigger thanks to COVID, and therefore that's causing that inequality. And we're going to see even more inequality amongst countries as well, especially in an environment where there's low interest rates and there's a lot of capital floating around. The third point is this whole climate debate and energy transition. I think that's going to really start moving along at a faster pace. And that's again driven by technology, by innovation. And I think given where the new generation wants to go with this whole climate debate and energy transition, I think it's going to speeden up, whether it's just more wind and solar, whether it's EV, whether it's storage. I think that transition is going to happen. So all these 3, 4 things is leading to my point, which Pranjal had made about technology, because I just feel that the speed that COVID is going to create in this disruption of technology is going to be significantly greater than we've ever seen. The question that I ask myself is the fact that when you look at all these incredible equity valuations in the technology world, is this really for real? Or is this another bubble being created? And I don't know where the answer is, but I would sort of lean towards that this is a real revolution and a disruption happening thanks to COVID. And therefore, what we're going to see, the adoption of AI and IoT, whether it's in industry, with the coming of 4G LTE, the coming of 5G, this whole thing about work from home, just like Pranjal was mentioning, right? It's going to have a fundamental shift in societies and economies, because as all of us start working more from home, there's going to be a change. What is the impact going to be on urban society, on urban infrastructure? So there's just going to be a huge change and a much faster adoption by industry to get onto this technology bandwagon.
Kaveri, work from home is that going to be the new normal? I mean, you and I think are going to be very happy if that happens. I don't know about the others.
Yeah, but it doesn't really help people who work with their hands. I think it helps people who work with their minds rather than hands. But I want to focus on the point that Tejpreet mentioned, inequality. We also have to look at inequality within society. And I think that is really the big issue. You have women who are facing a double burden. You don't necessarily have, equal parenting and equal share in household chores, in this situation. You'll have fewer women in the public space, as we've seen the participation of women in the workforce is declining. And I think that is going to have a tremendous impact on the self-confidence of women to move around in the public space. I don't know what kind of long-term impact that will have. The second issue is, I think, the inequality in learning that we'll have among children. There's a wonderful piece in the NYT yesterday, which actually looked at how vast numbers of school children in India just have no access to learning because of the digital divide. And that also means no access to proper food, because the midday meal was really one of the reasons why they went to school in the first place. So this kind of inequality in society, even one lost year in a young child's life in education, will have tremendous impact. One lost year in a woman's life in terms of work will have a tremendous impact. What kind of what kind of dynamic will it create in the family unit? Will it, will it ensure that because just the man has access to the cell phone, he really becomes, the monopoly power in the household? It strengthens him. So I think access to technology is a huge thing. And, we've been talking so much about inequality within nations. Between nations, we also have to look at this inequality within the society and what kind of urbanization this will create. When we saw the migrants going home, it was not just a question of inequality, it was also a question of their dignity, because they felt that they had been abandoned by people that they had worked for, whose homes they had worked in, whose cities they had built, and that feeling of dignity. I think the whole idea of 2021 is going to be not just equity, but also dignity. And I think people are going to stand up for themselves. They will have to stand up for themselves. Otherwise, they really have been left to their own devices, I think, in terms of just the deepening divide within society.
Social impact really that is we're going to see a spin-off of. But Shahana, you're also dealing with a lot of issues. Another spin-off, data privacy. What's the legal angle? There's going to be our lives are now going to be really governed by data, what Pranjal and Tejpreet have been saying.
Right. And thank you, Priya. And just before getting into the data privacy, I actually want to address a couple of the points made earlier. And on the work from home, I think that's one of the most exciting trends. And I actually see it as kind of a very positive change, because this is something that professional women for decades had been wanting. and always been told that this is not the way things were done and you needed FaceTime. And I think the pandemic has completely changed that. Just as in World War II, when the men went off to the military and went to war, women had to fulfill civilian jobs, and that's how women came into the labor force. And similarly now, I think this work from home is going to fundamentally change the nature of work and how women are perceived in work, but also I think in terms of the architecture. So for example, now offices, a lot of companies, like for example Microsoft, has said that they don't want employees coming back permanently. People are free to work from home for the rest of their lives, right? So basically there's a huge shift from expensive urban areas to people moving to cheaper areas and working out of those. Even in terms of hotel, like, so for example, there's going to be a lot more hoteling in office space. So offices will have smaller commercial spaces. They'll have cabins instead of open architecture, and then 2-3 people will share the same cabin. Like 2 people come in for 1 day of the week, 2 people come in for the next 3 days. So it's going to have a fundamental change in how office work is going to be structured, and also how people live in their own homes, right? Like in terms of having your home office and his home office and her home office. So I think there's a huge change on that front, on architecture, spatial, home, office divide. I think the other
impact on real estate also. I remember you were telling me that
exactly the impact on real estate. I mean, commercial real estate is not. I mean, for most companies, that's a huge overhead cost that they can now do without. And then if you also look at other trends, for example, like consumers, right? Like this whole explosion of online commerce. Amazon is a great example of that. But you also have contactless, cashless kind of economy, mobile wallets. Everyone is going to, so there's going to be a move towards and a push towards these new technologies and new payment methods and how consumers do that. And I also see other things like trends in fashion. So no one is wearing high heels and glamorous clothes while working, right? Now this whole new thing of sweatigans or athletic wear or like leisure wear. So this whole thing of what fashion means, I think everyone now wants comfort. Then the whole thing of how we perceive, the joke now is that the pandemic, the trend is that everyone has now become a chef, a designer, an artist, or a gardener. So it has created these other whole areas where people are exploring other parts of their personality, which is on the positive side. But on the negative side, you also have great mental health issues. What people are saying, that this pandemic, which is a physical pandemic, is going to be followed by another wave of really mental health, depression, anxiety issues. Right. And I think you're only seeing the surface of that. So I think there are a lot of these other interesting issues and trends we're seeing. But on the data privacy issues, I think, yes. I mean, I think, going back to what Pranjal was saying, what Tejpreet was saying, with artificial intelligence, I think this intersection of technology, data privacy, and national security, it has really come into loggerheads. And you see this in the way that, these different tracking, contact tracing, tracking devices have been used. And the one that the German app actually has been the most successful from a data privacy perspective and is actually being now used in the rest of EU. There was another contact tracing app that was developed by Israel, which was actually then challenged in the Israeli Supreme Court, saying that it was against privacy. So I think that balance between what is individual privacy and what is national security, and how technology like privacy by design versus privacy versus default, I think these are really interesting questions that we're going to grapple with for a very long time.
Okay, before I get Tejpreet, I think can you take on that question? How are you balancing? You've been developing a lot of artificial intelligence apps to keep people safe on the workforce, on the floor, workforce. How do you handle the privacy question? Is that a big deal with your clients?
Yeah, Priya, it is a huge deal for all our clients. And we spent a lot of time back in April, May, as we were designing all these technologies with a lot of the legal folks in all these large multinationals in London and New York to discuss exactly these kinds of issues. And to the point that Shana was making was, where's the balance between what's the need of the corporate and what infringes upon privacy? And therefore, I think what I did see was that companies taking a more flexible approach because of the crisis in the pandemic in the first 6 months, in order to address these issues. So for example, what we would do is whenever we would do, social distancing alerts using computer vision models, we wouldn't store any data on any of our servers, and whatever little alerts that we would store on the cloud would also get wiped out within a short period of time as per the company's policy. We would not store anybody's data. All the data would be stored on the company's own servers. We would not, everything was anonymized. So even when two phones would come next to each other and they would actually detect that a contact tracing has happened or an interaction has happened, the data points on both people's phones was completely anonymized and encrypted. So like that, we took a lot of small little steps to ensure the safety of data and the privacy of data. Now, I'll be frank that there were, I think, what was acceptable within the last 6 months because of COVID would not have been acceptable in the pre-COVID world of data privacy. So I think certain flexibilities were brought into the system. Now, the question for all of us will be is, has that line moved forever so that going forward, this becomes the new norm? Or do we go back to the old days where even taking a picture of somebody's face is not acceptable? So I think, Priya, these are all the challenges that we're going to see going forward as to where this balance is going to come out.
Pranjal, Shana has made a couple of points also on the economics. You will see a lot of, maybe the commercial space going, residential space increasing. A bit more on that, and how does, technology work in enabling that?
So it's going to be interesting because, the whole concept of hubs for industry is going to reduce significantly. So you don't need to have a cluster in Bangalore or Hyderabad. So a lot of, at least in the services sector, now they've realized that people are working out of villages as long as there is a great communication. And the good thing about what's happening in India is that there is a lot of investment coming in digital infrastructure, which means that either Wi-Fi spots or broadband network across the country is going to be far more evenly spread. It still has to go to the last mile, but it's not that you'll have great broadband in Delhi, but a terrible one if you go 100 kilometers out of Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore. So I think to that extent you will see a big shift. Therefore, you don't need to have these 10-floor building complexes where 2,000 people work at the same place. A lot of that will reduce. This whole question of people having to sit facing each other and then being productive, that will reduce. In manufacturing, it will remain. But thanks to the fact that the GST has made India one tax market, people now can work from anywhere. The important thing which is going to develop is really out of the COVID vaccine effort, Priya. And I think that's something which all of us need to dwell on. The fact that the world is going to get into an effort to deliver vaccine to 7 billion people is unprecedented in recent times. Now, think about it from the point of manufacture to the point of delivery. Huge amount of technology is going to be used, right? Delivery technology, storage technology, tracking technology, follow-up technology, which will not just deliver the vaccine in the best way possible for all countries, but the spin-off of that would be in so many other areas. It could be for food, it could be fruits and vegetables, it could be so many other product categories. So, I see that out of this crisis and this whole distribution and logistical value chain of the vaccine, tremendous new things will come out, which I think we can't anticipate right now. It's a bit like, Shana referred to the World War, but the other positive impact of after effect of World War was that the military industrial complex, the technology which came out of that could be deployed in so many civilian uses. So I see a lot of interesting things happening because the value chains will be strengthened to a level never before.
I mean, healthcare is really going to, be the next big ticket industry. Which are the other industries that you see coming up?
Well, certainly healthcare, pharma, I think education, we've invested in a very good national education policy. It remains to be seen how it's implemented, but if it is implemented properly, I think it will change the way people are learning. And I think the point that everyone is making, that if there is enough and adequate investment in digital infrastructure, these inequities will disappear and dissolve. But that is my hope. Whether that happens, I'm not sure. But I see the rise of what is called digital nomads, what everyone is talking about, that You have people who can work out of anywhere, anytime. But also the developing of side hustles, what were considered hobbies eventually become sort of side businesses. I think everyone will be learning, relearning, everyone will be trying to upgrade their skills. There won't be one, what's called the gig economy now, there won't be one career for a lifetime as our parents had. Or as we did even till until recently. I think all of us will be trying to upgrade ourselves as we go along and trying to do different things and making and adapting ourselves to the world as it changes. But I'm, as you know, a bit of a pessimist, and I think there's also this shrinking of this entire world into the home, which has to be looked at very carefully, because now everything is focused on the home, whether it's entertainment, whether it's work, whether it's the family relationship, of course. How is all that going to change? How are personal relationships going to change with our elders, with our with children? I think that is something we're still not very clear on, and I think this will remain a focus of great discussion. And I hope, with the kind of mental health issues, as Shahana mentioned, India actually can provide a way forward. We've already succeeded hugely in the Anganwadi concept, using the Anganwadi in some areas like Madhya Pradesh and Goa as mental health workers. If we work on issues like this, creating community health workers out of our Anganwadis, India can actually provide a model to the rest of the world. So I think these are things that we have to look at very carefully, but it will take time to unfold.
But I'm an optimist, Kaveri. So
I know that.
let me tell you that see, the work from home has also brought us back into a work-life balance, right? It was insane that people were working 12 to 16 hours in office, had no time for
I'm not
family.
sure about that. I think, Pranjal, I think we're still working long hours.
No, so what the point is, so point originally I made is that next year onwards, I mean 21 onwards, I think there will be a rebalancing. Everything will not be work from home. People will go back to some semblance of normality. It will not be completely work from office or completely work from home.
People are now calling the phygital world, partly physical, partly digital. Everything will now be digital. So I
And
think
I just want, yeah, and I just want to jump into that, into what, a couple of comments on both your comments, Kaveri and Pranjal. So, on what you said about the work, I mean, we already see some of the negative impacts in terms of huge increase in gender-based violence, like domestic violence has been on the rise across the world in all economies, all
I have to
societies.
come in. My dentist told me he was open during lockdown because of cases of domestic violence. People are coming with their jaws and the teeth all over the place.
people have forgotten to live with each other. People have
Right.
forgotten how to have a civilized relationship with each other 24/7.
Correct.
And then
Yeah, Shana.
the other trend here is also, because we're working more from home, is this thing of everyone is more digitally engaged, right? We're all on our phones, all on our computers, all online. And you have this concept of, like your strong ties and your weak ties. Your strong ties, like, so, people have connected through Zoom and through technology with their close people, your relationships, your close friends. But what is missing in this is that, what they call your weak ties, that when you're walking to office, the person the shop you pick up a coffee from, the person you say hello to on the way in an elevator down to, down in an office, the casual interactions are missing, and people miss that, their walks in their neighborhoods, and and people sort of think that those are not important, but actually those are very important in our lives. And I think this whole sort of toss up of what is really important and what is core and what makes us happy, it all goes back, because I think this is a time of great intensity, in terms of, everyone is thinking much more intensely, because you have a lot more time now that you're not commuting and you're not, stuck in traffic for hours. So I think the questions that people are asking of themselves, which is why also this whole mental health issue, because people are getting depressed, anxiety attacks, all of that is related. So it's interesting that a lot of these trends that are emerging, but as Pranjal said, again, some of these will be good, some of these will be bad, but it's hard to predict. And, and I think it's very easy to say that this is just going to disappear, but it may be the case that, we are living with this for the next 20 years, that every year we have to get a flu shot. Just like we get a flu shot, we have to get a COVID
Everything.
shot,
Yeah.
right? It's something that's going to become...
And every year we have a new hygiene protocol. How are we going to deal with all that?
That is true. In fact, I'll give you the last word, TP, because we can talk, but you are the man who has to deliver. So can you, something to make our lives back to normal? I recall you talking about, say, an artificial intelligence appliance one can wear, like a watch that will help us, go for our walks, do a little bit of contact tracing, but, emerge from outside our homes for the leisure world.
I think I'm more optimistic, Priya. I think the world's going to come back very, very fast, is my personal perspective. I think there's going to be a huge global synchronous recovery in Europe, the United States, and in Asia. And I think that's going to come back much, much faster than I thought. I think, India will see by 2021, while I think we'll see a contraction of 5.5% in 2020, I think our economy will grow by about, anything between 8.5% to 9.5%. And I just see this whole thing happening because of the following, for a few reasons. One is there's going to be a huge amount of capital coming into the market. The vaccine, like Pranjal was sharing, is going to really change the world, the way this whole vaccine is going to be rolled out. But what I get amazed, Priya, is the way this whole recovery is happening from a consumer-led perspective, the kind of demand and the kind of consumption that's happening around the world. We're already back to close to pre-COVID levels. And I think it's only going to increase. All we were talking about technology, the fact that a small guy in a small town, in a small village has access to the same goods that all of us have in big cities or from anywhere in the world, is changing that whole consumption-led thing. So I think I'm very, very optimistic that the percolation of AI and IoT, not only in the industrial world, but in the personal world, the way we buy, the way we work, the way we do everything is going to just change the way. And that's what makes me really excited in this new world.
Thank you so much for this conversation as we go into the new year with a partly optimistic, partly pessimist panel, but at least we're all looking ahead. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and wish you all a very happy new year.
Happy New Year, Priya.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.